Welcome to my Bob Thurman podcast. I'm so grateful some good friends enabled me to present them to you. If you enjoy them and find them useful, please think of becoming a member of Tibet House US to help preserve Tibetan culture. Tibet House is the Dalai Lama's cultural center in America. All best wishes. Have a great day.
This is episode 308, Mind Reform, Becoming the Engine of Happiness for All.
Welcome back to the wish-granting gem tree field. Let's meditate for a minute together. Sit in a balanced way, breathe gently. Let your ordinary reality, not only your sense of body and location, but the cosmos, continent, planet, era, let it all dissolve. Don't think about anything. Feel that you're just a vast empty space, floating there nicely, no division of self and other, no worries, just pure, sheer, lucid voidness, vast space of freedom itself. And then arise from that, suddenly in your most alert, perky, luminous form, your meditative self, on the roof of the world, on a bluff overlooking Lake Manasarovar, with an island in the middle of the lake, out of it growing a giant tree made of jewels, agate and coral and diamond and emerald and ruby and sapphire and topaz, lights radiating everywhere, its crown in the heavens, with fluffy clouds. And on the branches of the tree, instead of the Christmas ornaments, are the glistening lotuses, and on the buds of the lotuses sit the holy mentors, the enlightened beings, the great teachers, the saints, the saviors, the goddesses, the gods, your whole pantheon of enlightened beings, sitting and looking down at you, happily blessing you, radiating light rays to you. You fill up with the light rays, you glow and you're energized with them, your self-doubt and your self-limitation and your self-defeating attitudes melting away and flowing out from you. And then you become so glowing with light that the light reflects around you to all the beings sitting around you on the green sward who don't know to look at the tree. They don't see the tree, they just see an empty lake. So they're looking at you. Wonder what you're looking at and why it is that you're starting to glow and you hum and you're levitating there in your energy field, feeling so good. And then forget about the visualization, just let it be there. You're in that field, filled up with these rainbow jewel light rays. Then you salute them, hail, enlightened ones, thank you for coming. Please bless me to realize the teachings. Sustain me, bless all beings to realize the teachings. Bless me to help them realize the teachings. Then offering, radiate the whole world to them. Pick up the planet in your hands. Hold it out to them. Say, here, you take the world. We're messing it up, polluting it, messing with the ozone, filling it with too many people, destroying too many species. You take it, have the universe, and have the relief and the burden of putting the responsibility for the universe on the enlightened beings. Then think about your own actions, your negative actions of taking lives, taking what is not given, sexual misconduct, telling lies, making divisions between people, speaking harshly, speaking frivolously, meaninglessly, holding greedy thoughts, holding malicious thoughts, holding unrealistic attitudes. Those 10 negative acts, you think about whatever I did of them, all my different lives. I sincerely repent. I'm sorry I wronged you, and mentor beings, 3 jewels, enlightened beings. I didn't live up to your standard. Ordinary living beings, I'm sorry I wronged you, I harmed you, I misled you, I failed to attain enlightenment to help you. I'm really sorry I did that. I won't do it anymore. I'm going to do the opposite sort of virtuous, wonderful things. I'm going to save lives. I'm going to give gifts. I'm going to be sexually correct and helpful and sensitive. I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to speak reconcilingly, peacemakingly. I'm going to speak sweetly. I'm going to speak meaningfully. I'm going to hold generous thoughts and detached thoughts. I'm going to hold loving thoughts and patient thoughts. I'm going to hold realistic views of the cause and effect of evolution, of the transformation of enlightenment, of the 12 links of dependent origination, the process of causation of the universe, of the 4 noble truths. Then next I'm going to rejoice in front of you, O mentor beings. Let us rejoice in all the good deeds of all beings throughout the universe. Let us not feel a drop of envy, of competitiveness, of contempt, but let us sincerely congratulate every single one from depth of heart and rejoice with their good deeds and well-being. Then, O enlightened ones, please bring your teaching. Make the Dharma reign of teaching of enlightenment upon me and upon all beings, so that we can gain the understanding to be free of suffering and the cause of suffering, to achieve happiness and the cause of happiness. And then, O enlightened ones, don't go be transcendent and drop out and float there in the truth body. Be sort of beyond and aloof. Don't just stick to your great bliss void vision, but see us specifically in our relativity and our suffering. Help us. Stay with us forever. And finally, anything we do that's good here, let us dedicate it, not for personal fame or profit or gain, but for Buddhahood, total enlightenment for the sake of the happiness of all beings. So those are the 7 limbs we do, connecting ourselves within the refuge field. Then we turn our mind to the 4 themes within the arpeggio that reinforce our feeling of transcendence, our feeling of true self-appreciation, our feeling of wanting to drop out from the rat race of the world and be on vacation, spiritual quest, retreat, lifelong, mentally, by achieving transcendent abandon. And these are the themes of the preciousness of the human life that we have endowed with liberty and opportunity. The theme of the immediacy of death. Each moment is infinite. Each moment has infinite blessing. The theme of the inexorability of causal connection, of the infinite continuity of life, and the specific shaping of positive and negative experiences in life based on positive and negative evolutionary actions. And the 4th tone about the suffering, the universal suffering about every aspect of egocentric existence, even being a form realm deity in the bliss heaven of Brahma, even being a formless realm deity in the absolute quiescence of infinite space, infinite consciousness, infinite nothingness, apparent nothingness, and beyond consciousness and unconsciousness, the 4th state, still being in those states, even as a deity of those states, living billions of aeons in those states, still suffering because it's still a temporary state, it's still created, therefore is destroyed eventually. These 4 themes then liberate us from any kind of ambition for anything short of total enlightenment, total liberation, total freedom. No mundane state of power or pleasure or even knowledge is worthwhile. Nothing about the egocentric life cycle is satisfactory. And when we realize these 4, preciousness of life, immediacy of death, infinity of causation, suffering of egocentric life cycle, we achieve mental transcendence. We feel tremendous relief. We excuse ourselves from all kinds of boring, routine duties and obligations, and we focus upon the true meaning of our life, which is to attain perfect freedom and perfect awareness, perfect enlightenment. And then we come to the theme of the 3rd session, which we quickly do as well, the theme that we are interconnected with all beings, that just as we feel relief to achieve liberation and freedom, so all beings need that relief. And in fact, since we are indelibly interconnected with them, until they also have the relief, our relief will not be absolutely perfect. And so in that line, we'd resolve to conceive the spirit of enlightenment, cultivate the spirit of enlightenment, develop the spirit of enlightenment, whatever you say, plant the spirit of enlightenment in our mind stream, evolutionary stream. And there we take the 11-step process. We create the ground of equanimity, a sense of equal dedication and commitment and connection to all beings, with no preferences, no special enemies and no special friends. Upon that ground, then, we recognize all beings as having been our mothers in the infinite life. Upon that sense of kinship and familiarity, we remember the kindness of the mother of this life and therefore all the mothers of all the lives. Upon that sense of deep affection, deep appreciation for the mothers, we then develop a feeling of gratitude and a wish to repay their kindness by making them truly happy. Upon that, we move then to the fifth thing of deciding to exchange self and others, to give up our self-preoccupation, and to adopt the preoccupation with others, adopt all of them as our children in a way, be the mother of all of them. And then moving to the next one, we then recognize the disadvantages. In fact, we reinforce that resolve to exchange self and others, both being equal, self and others being equal, and that each one seeks happiness and seeks to avoid suffering. And we then think of the disadvantages of maintaining self-preoccupation, how it has gotten us into trouble and kept us in an unsatisfactory state since beginning this time. We then move to the next step and we recognize the advantages of cherishing others, how all of them are dear to us. They are the jewel mine of our potential virtue of our own Buddhahood. Without them, we couldn't become Buddhas and have the perfect bliss. And then we move to the next state where we feel totally loving towards all of them. We see them in their happiness. We visualize their happiness. We determine that they should have happiness in the cause of happiness. We then realistically appraise their condition of suffering, and we develop great compassion for them. We wish them to become free of that suffering and the cause of that suffering. And then the 10th stage, we realize that we must take responsibility for them. We develop the magnificent messianic resolve that we'll be that one more Buddha in the universe that will see to it that all of the beings we are aware of in the universe achieve freedom from suffering, permanent and total fulfillment of enlightenment. And then the 11th step is where we recognize that all other beings, many other beings, infinite numbers of other beings have become Buddhas already. They are doing the utmost that they can for all beings. And that therefore we must join their number to be able to bring those beings that we perceive as not having been fully taken care of, still all of our mother beings. And we must become a Buddha for the sake of all these beings. And this is where we then begin with today, of having conceived that mind that aspires to become a Buddha for the sake of all beings, that turns the heart into making a purpose to evolution, to all of our continuum of future existences. However we conceive of that, whether it's through a system of reincarnation or a system of transmigration, or whether it's through a material system of the law of conservation of energy, whatever our sense of being connected into the continuity of the future, we determine that whatever atom of us or whatever bit of our consciousness or whatever goes forward, we will not rest until we have become the engine of the liberation and the freedom and the happiness of all beings. We can relax from the more meditative thing, although we're staying within the Jewel Refuge Tree. And we're coming up to what I call mind reform, which is involved with the exchange of self and other teaching. And others call mind training or mind transformation, Lojong. And one's becoming a Bodhisattva, a child, a son or daughter of the Buddhas. It's all in this border of resolving to achieve the spirit of enlightenment, resolving to be the Bodhisattva, developing the heroic conception of saving all beings from suffering. And in that is this wonderful mind reform method where one really focuses very drastically on the self-preoccupation habit, to really focus and see how all of our troubles in life come from being self-preoccupied. and how all virtues and all happinesses and benefits in life come from being other preoccupied instead, exchanging the self-preoccupation for the other preoccupation. Seeing how, seeking our own well-being exclusively, we have harmed others immeasurable times over previous lives, and by those negative karmic acts, or even thought that, mentally harmed them, verbally harmed them, physically harmed them, and by those acts and words and thoughts, harmed ourselves by adopting more negative evolutionary aspects and forms, and becoming embodied in more negative evolutionary ways. And how in principle, by seeking our own self-interest, we never really will fulfill our own self-interest. So it's not just the self-interest element, but it's the inefficacy of this type of pursuit of self-interest through self-preoccupation that we focus on in the mind training. And here I will just give a list of the commitments of the mind training. This kind of training where you reverse the normal behavior, the normal sort of self-aggrandizing and self-promoting behavior, because you're substituting other promotion for self-promotion. You're substituting other preoccupation for self-preoccupation. So it's really like an opposite way from the people of the world. They say, practice mind reform without contradicting other commitments. Avoid reckless behavior. Avoid being biased. Make changes to your aspiration, intensify it while remaining natural. Do not criticize the faults of others. Do not contemplate others' faults. Purify your greatest illusion first. Abandon all hope for results. Abandon poisonous food. Be grudging with your delusions. Do not retaliate to abuse. Do not wait in ambush. Do not pinpoint the weaknesses of others. Do not use others as scapegoats. Do not misuse the Dharma. Never aim to be the quickest to the top. Do not turn a god into a demon. And do not seek happiness by causing others suffering. Each one of these has an extensive instruction, but they indicate a person who is on vacation, basically. This is the training of someone who has the mind of transcendence. They're on vacation from the normal mundane goals. They're not seeking normal success, normal status, normal ego space, normal victory. Therefore, they're looking for something completely different out of all of their relationships. They're looking to transform the mind from being self-preoccupied to being other-preoccupied. In every exchange, they're looking for the happiness of the other. Therefore, let the enemy have the victory. Let them win. Let them have it. Go ahead. Take the defeat oneself. If they abuse one, take the benefit of the abuse by building your tolerance and patience, and do not think of retaliating. Be only grudging about your own delusions. Be critical of your own faults and biases. If someone harms you, you should not hold this in mind and wait for an opportunity to take revenge. Strengthen your mind of patience instead, and find ways to forgive the harm done to you. Do not pinpoint the weaknesses of others. In your actions, be careful not to offend others, whether humans or spirits. Never humiliate them by pointing out their weak spots in front of others. Do not misuse the Dharma. The Mahayana purpose of the Dharma teachings, and the mind training in particular, is to gain enlightenment to benefit all beings. You should therefore avoid using the teachings just to promote yourself and gain wealth, reputation, or other worldly success. If I was giving these talks, and we were doing this retreat with a view to trying to gain worldly success, that would really be the wrong thing to do. Far from getting that, we would get all kinds of negative results. I do love the mind reform tradition, as little as I'm able to practice it, or perform it, as I like to say, because it really is so radical and so marvelous. It engages enlightened self-interest, not merely some sort of sentimental altruism. It really proceeds by recognizing the fact that if you are preoccupied with your own condition all the time, it will always be unsatisfactory to you, and you will only narrow your being and make yourself smaller and close up more and more and become less and less enlightened. We listen to this voice within that we identify as ourselves telling us constantly, well, now, is that going to make you happy? Is this going to be nice? And what can you do for yourself today? What should you do for yourself today? Etc., etc. And we're constantly engaged in this inner focus and inner attention on our self-situation. But then those times, if we reflect, when we really feel happy, when we have a moment of relief from this constant inner griping and inner restlessness and inner discontent, is when something has happened to us aesthetically, sensorily, or intellectually, in engagement with others, when we are doing something really wonderful and another is really benefiting from it, like we've given a gift and we're just temporarily distracted from our own inner self-preoccupation by someone just jumping up and down for joy, by someone feeling, wow, isn't this great? Thanks so much. Oh, I'm so happy. This is really nice, and blah, 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 you know. And we're just for a moment caught up in the joy, like when you give a child a new toy or some kind of special thing and they're just absorbed with it and they're just entranced with it. And then you forget about your own dissatisfaction and you just enjoy their enjoyment. And so this teaching recognizes that the essence of the happiness of those moments in life are that we're no longer thinking about our condition. The minute we have an experience and we stop to evaluate it and say, how fun was that to me? How much did I enjoy them enjoying their new toy? When we have that thought, then we completely lose the enjoyment. How great was that Van Gogh that I saw? And then it's never good enough. Since those times of other preoccupation are the times when we are happy ourselves, let us just go straight to the other preoccupation. Let's not just be self-preoccupied and then now and then find something, be surprised by something where we become other preoccupied and we're momentarily distracted from our cycle of inner despair and inner misery. Let us go for the other preoccupation. Let us focus on them. Let us always think of being there for sentient beings. What we're doing is for sentient beings. And forget about the result for ourselves. It is acting without focusing on the results of the act. Acting just purely out of the joy of the action, out of the virtue of the action, and not thinking about any result. And this is the yoga of positive evolutionary action. This is what they call acting transcendently, with the overlooking of the three sectors of the act. That is to say, when you give a gift, you don't perceive yourself as the giver. You don't perceive the gift as a gift. You don't perceive the receiver as the receiver. Something flows from this part of you to that part of you. And in a way you've done it without perceiving yourself doing it, without taking note of it, without appropriating, saying, oh, I'm so great I gave a gift. Or, gee, was it too big a gift I gave? Or, gee, am I going to miss that myself later? All this kind of thing, which ruins the transcendence of any gift or any act. But this is the mind transformation teaching. The teaching of all of the great saints of Tibet, acting in this kind of amazing, unconventional way. As Milarepa used to say, people of the world seem crazy to the Dharma person, because the people of the world are seeking wealth and security and shelter and comfort and possessions and status and so forth. Everything that the Dharma person sees as melting away like dew with the rising of the sun. Completely unsubstantial results. And people of Dharma see the inner world of the opening of the soul to generosity and tolerance and wisdom and openness and freedom as the only thing worthwhile. And this can be enhanced sometimes by poverty. It can be enhanced by accepting injury, by accepting defeat, if you do it in the right way. It can be enhanced by not retaliating, by not seeking to compete, only competing with yourself, competing against your self-preoccupation, bringing other preoccupation to bear against self-preoccupation. So then the way that the Dharma person lives, like Milarepa, it looks insane to the people of the world. For example, Milarepa used to say, most mothers and fathers have a big thing about giving wealth to their children, They want to leave them a legacy, some money or a house, possessions, their social status. But actually all of those things simply trap the offspring into feeling that those are the worthwhile things in life. And then they might be deceived into spending their whole life seeking more wealth and status and fame and possessions. Whereas if one really wanted the full happiness, the total enlightenment of that offspring, one might give them teaching of Dharma rather than material things. At least give it in addition to some sort of material assistance. Nothing wrong with a certain degree of material assistance to leave people free of being preoccupied with only surviving, getting by. But to leave that as if that were the only thing, and not to have a higher aspiration for one's child, is in a way harmful to that child, entrapping them deeper and deeper into the worldly concerns. That's a little taste of the mind transformation tradition. I have a proverb for it in English. I say, Buddha is as Buddha does. Meaning that we shouldn't hold Buddhahood or enlightenment so far away from ourselves. Sometimes when you're too religious and you think, I've got to concentrate, I've got to be on retreat, I've got to become enlightened so I can help all beings. And then, meanwhile, I don't want to help this one being over here. I refuse to give $1 to this being. I'm going to squabble and quarrel with that being about who gets to sit where in the retreat. We become less focused on the day-to-day mindfulness of our day-to-day being as we would be if we were Buddha. Once I am Buddha, then I'll be nice. Then I won't struggle to the top. I'll perceive you as more important than myself and so on. When I am Buddha, that's the way Buddha's consciousness is. But until I get that, I better be more focused on myself to get to be Buddha. As Shantideva says, Buddha only thinks of the welfare of others. Buddha has no thought for him or herself. Because the Buddha, him or herself, is utterly self-satisfied in total blissful freedom. So they don't need anything. However, they don't shut out of their awareness the neediness of other beings. And therefore the only thing remaining for them to do in the world is to satisfy the needs of the other beings. And of course, satisfying them ultimately doesn't just mean giving material things or palliating their suffering, but it means giving them the Dharma teachings which will enable them to liberate themselves from suffering and its cause. Now we come to the Bodhisattva vow. Not that we are going to be taking the Bodhisattva vow in this retreat unless you already do have it. And then one can always keep retaking it because it's always good to renew. And here, in order to take the Bodhisattva vow, we have to know what the Bodhisattva vow is. And there are said to be the 18 root vows of the Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva vow is not only just saying, I vow to save all beings, although that's the central gist of it. But the Bodhisattva vow has 18 root and 46 branch vows. What are the ways in which you determine to guide your interaction with others when you are born again in a mode of where you're living for others more than living for self, or living for self through living for others primarily, having exchanged self-preoccupation for other preoccupation? What is wonderful about this aspect also, it's so like other world religions, the good aspects of all the other world religions, the aspect of the Sermon on the Mount of Jesus, the great compassion he taught, the great compassion taught in Islam of Allah al-Rahman, of being compassionate for others, Confucius's notion of being loyal and gracious with others and feeling true love for them, Ran. Westerners have translated as humanity, like being humanitarian with others because they have some sort of unemotional concept about Chinese civilization, which is wrong. Ran means love. Be loving with others. And by being loving with others, then everything you do with them will be automatically gracious. In Hinduism, they have the love of God, bhakti, and they have the maitri and all of the loving virtues of others, gentleness and nonviolence, ahimsa. Common human religion of kindness, of friendliness, of love and compassion. Every human being needs love from others. They couldn't live without loving relationships with others, and they would never be happy themselves unless they love others. And you don't need religion for that. It's a common biological fact. We are kind of a group being. And the Bodhisattva vows do acknowledge that. The first root downfall, for example, is to praise yourself and depreciate others. Not giving the Dharma to those who need it, or not giving material things to those who need them. Not forgiving someone when they do sincerely apologize. Abandoning the universal outlook of the Mahayana teaching. Abandoning the idea that all beings deserve full of happiness and full enlightenment. Making use of offerings given to the three jewels, using them yourself. Abandoning the Dharma, saying that some teaching of the Dharma that we don't personally like, that is not like fit with my idea, oh, that's no good, that's stupid, oh, Buddha couldn't have said that. Pushing monks or nuns to disrobe and go off and be normal worldly people by not really realizing what a great virtue it is to enter the vacation realm, the resort of the monastic sangha. Committing the 5 heinous crimes: killing father, mother, a saint, wounding a Buddha, or creating a division in the community. Holding unrealistic views. Completely destroying towns, and so on. The bombing of Yugoslavia was a little bit, unfortunately, too much like this. Civilian bombing in general. People who've done that, even though they were on the righteous side, they were against the horrible genociding dictator Hitler, Shiite killing Saddam Hussein, or genocidal Milosevic. But by going too far and doing this cowardly thing of bombing and destroying civilians and destroying entire towns, they are certainly losing their Bodhisattva vow, although they're on the right side. Teaching voidness to the unprepared. And here the danger is in teaching voidness, emptiness. This is something which I'm about to do. I hope I'm not losing my Bodhisattva vow. You better be prepared, everybody who's listening to this throughout all future time. This is something in the Buddhist tradition, where in the Tibetan tradition, where they feel that voidness or selflessness is sort of a little bit like a secret teaching or an advanced teaching, because it could be confusing for someone to realize that they have no fixed identity without being prepared in some other way of how to deal with that freedom. That is the teaching of freedom, but freedom is dangerous for someone unprepared for it. It might freak them out. They're a little reserved about teaching voidness or emptiness or freedom in its full form of wisdom. But I don't agree with it personally in the modern time. But I do believe that people in the modern world already have a kind of involuntary experience of identitylessness. The reason that it's dangerous for people in more traditional societies was that they were sort of quite comfortable cultural matrices that they lived in, and they didn't have this tremendous encounter with nihility or with nothingness that the modern people have. And we modern people, all of us already start out almost thinking that we're nothing. So it's not dangerous to us. It's considered dangerous for someone with a naive sense of identity to lose that and then mistake the loss of it for that they are nothing and become nihilistic. But all of us in the modern realm are nihilistic. And therefore we need the medicine of emptiness and selflessness, I think, as the critique of nothingness, as the critique of nihility. Reversing others' aspiration for complete enlightenment. If someone decides to become a bodhisattva and wants to save all beings, sort of persuading them that that's too difficult, why don't you just go and do this, do some other thing, don't try to do it. Causing someone to abandon individual liberation, someone who is a monastic, whatever their particular ethical vow or level of discipline is, to tell them that's useless and forget it and have a good time. Disparaging the monastic vehicle is losing of the bodhisattva vow. Never think that the bodhisattva vehicle, the universal vehicle, is in any way against the monastic vehicle. It totally presupposes the monastic vehicle. It's totally essential that people have the mind of transcendence and the ethic of transcendence before they can begin to have the mind of universal compassion and the ethic of universal salvation. Otherwise, if they don't have the mind of transcendence before that, they don't really know what is the salvation they want to make for everybody. They have no idea. They have not even experienced the first sort of relief of transcendence themselves. Just as the mind of compassion, to develop love for others, you have to first love yourself in wishing yourself to have freedom, and not just love yourself in a fake way by wishing yourself to have comfort or wealth or security, all of which will be illusory. As compassion depends upon transcendence, so the Mahayana depends upon the monastic vehicle. Falsely claiming to have realized emptiness, if you don't really understand what is actual reality, but you pretend that you do, receiving the property of the monastics, when someone else steals or destroys a monastery or some sort of icon or something like that, and then you become the broker for that, the fence. If you're a yogi and you're doing retreat and you're doing intense practice and you are given gifts by donors to support your practice, your performance, and then you, because you're irritated with the donor or something like that, you give those gifts away to someone who's not seriously practicing, that's a brute downfall. And finally, and the most importantly, the 18th of them, is giving up the spirit of enlightenment. Getting discouraged, someone really angers you, you feel very great anger or hatred for that person, you decide, I cannot be a bodhisattva, I cannot save all beings because I won't save this one. This one is just too horrible and I refuse to be embarked in the quest of Buddhahood for the sake of saving this Hitler, this Saddam Hussein, this terrible creepy person who just did all these nasty things. That one I'm leaving out. But if you leave out even one sentient being, once you take the vow to determination to save all beings, to then lose it by giving somebody up, some being up, is considered not good. And that is why you shouldn't rush to take the Bodhisattva vow. There is a ceremony, for example, if you eventually decide to do something like that at some stage, you make a vow to try to learn to make the vow. You don't rush into it. On the other hand, of course, if you do have the vision, as I said earlier, which I think is the key to it all, the vision of the infinite continuity of life, your life, personally, even though you'll change personality, of course, in other lives, and the lives of all the other beings that you know, and you recognize that we are in this together, we're in each other's faces for the infinite future. If you really have that vision viscerally, gain the common sense feeling that that is the nature of reality, and that you're never going to get away from these other people here, these other beings, even the animals, the bugs, they're all going to be with you forever, not always in the same form. The bugs will become humans. But once you feel that as a sort of visceral common sense thing, you feel that's the cosmos that you live in, and you're bound to live in, even as a Buddha you'll be in, then it becomes actually easy and natural to take the Bodhisattva vow and really mean it, and you can't possibly lose it. You cannot give it up. Because you cannot give up the quest of making all beings perfectly happy if you feel infinitely connected to those all beings. Well, you can break it. In a moment of anger or something, you can break the Bodhisattva vow and then repair it. But in order to break it where it's unrepairable, you have to think that what you did to break it was right. It didn't have a fault. You have to have no intention of trying not to break it again in the future. You have to think what you did was right in breaking it. You have to even be happy that you broke the vow. And you have no regret about it. Then there are many branch vows, 46, which I won't go into, because there are just too many. But they're very useful and wonderful. One learns the discipline of that, and one can do it. It's like a discipline of altruism. It's so sensitive and other sensitive. It's like an etiquette almost, ethics and morals and etiquette are very interconnected in Buddhist discipline. For example, in monastic discipline, it's like a kind of boot camp of gentleness, being a monk or a nun. Now, when you reach the point, of course, where you want to take the Bodhisattva vow, where you want to have the venturing mind of the Bodhisattva, the activated mind, at that time you enter the space, like this space, of the wish-granting gem tree refuge field. And you call to witness all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas from all the universes and all the 3 times, past, present, and future, and all the 10 directions. Vast, huge, cosmic sort of feeling of all the enlightened beings from everywhere. You call them to witness and invite them in a great host to the sky, like a close encounter of the third kind. And then you also must arrange very, very elaborate offerings, like really voluminous flowers, marvelous cakes and cookies and fruits and bags of rice and whatever you can, and incense and lights, and really a very big thing, a very lush display you must make to offer to this invited assembly. I mean, they obviously don't eat any of it, they don't use it, but it's the generosity, the feeling of offering, of connection that you do. And then you solemnly sort of swear, I will become a Buddha for the sake of all beings, as all the Buddhas did when they awoke from being individualistically oriented beings, just concerned with themselves and self-preoccupied beings. When they awoke from that to become other preoccupied beings, other cherishing bodhisattvas, just as they did and then eventually became Buddhas, so I too will become a bodhisattva. I too will conceive the spirit of enlightenment. I too will travel the path of the bodhisattva deeds and become a perfect Buddha for the sake of all my mother beings. Then you sort of repeat it 3 times, and then you call to witness all the beings. And this is a wonderful thing that one can do. And then it is said, when you do that, that is when you truly are born in the family of the Buddhas, as a child, of son or daughter of all the Buddhas. And you have a new kind of clan. You have a new gene, which is called your spiritual gene, your bodhisattva gene, which transforms your spiritual gene, which you take with you from life after life anyway. And you determine and you insist that your evolution and all of your experiences in life have the meaning that you give to them, which is that they are meaningful in that they are your way to Buddhahood for the sake of all beings. And then you use everything, even the most adverse conditions, even accidents and disasters and sicknesses. You turn everything into an assistant on your path. Everything into fuel for your vehicle. Even sleeping, you are generating vast hosts of merit. Even you do the smallest thing with the view that I do this little thing. I give this coin to this beggar with the view to becoming a perfect Buddha, so I can help this beggar become perfectly happy and give him the teaching where he can become a perfect Buddha. Then, having achieved the Bodhisattva mind, you must be rejoiced and you must be delighted. Like someone who is born again, actually. Because you are born again when you really take that bodhisattva vow. You have done something just truly magnificent. You have changed your life. You have changed your whole orientation in life. In the words of Shantideva, you say, just as the previous lords of bliss conceived the enlightenment spirit, and just as they successively lived by the bodhisattva practices, likewise for the sake of all that lives, do I conceive the spirit of enlightenment, and likewise shall I too successively follow the practices. In order to further increase it from now on, the intelligent who have vividly taken the spirit of enlightenment in this way should extol it in the following manner and congratulate themselves. Today, to each of us who takes that bodhisattva vow or even imagines or decides or determines that we want to develop to where we can take the bodhisattva vow, this is how we will greet ourselves upon doing that. Today my life has borne fruit. Having well obtained this human existence, I've been born in the family of Buddha, and now am one of Buddha's children. Thus, whatever actions I do from now on must be in accord with the family tradition. Never shall I do anything to disgrace this holy, faultless family. Just like a blind man discovering a jewel in a heap of trash, likewise, by some coincidence, I have found the enlightenment spirit within me. It is the supreme elixir that overcomes the Lord of Death. It is the inexhaustible treasure that eliminates all poverty in the world. It is the supreme medicine that cures the world's disease. It is the evergreen tree that shelters all beings wandering tired on the roads of life. It is the universal bridge that frees beings from wretched lives. It is the rising moon of the mind that dispels the torment of addictions. It is the great sun that burns away the misty ignorance of the world. It is the quintessential butter from the churning of the milk of Dharma. For all guests traveling the path of life who wish to experience the true happiness, this spirit will satisfy them with joy and exalt them in the highest bliss. Today, in the presence of all the saviors, I invite the world to be my guests at the feast of temporal and ultimate bliss. May gods, humans, and all be joyful. So that then concludes the spirit of enlightenment. And anyone who's even imagined ever cultivating it, opening their heart and turning it inside out in this wonderful way, and coming up with this marvelous, magnificent resolution to make all of evolution meaningful, and they themselves make it meaningful by becoming a perfectly enlightened being, the engine of the happiness of all other beings.
The Bob Thurman podcast is produced under a Creative Commons No Derivatives license. Please be sure to like, share, and repost on your favorite social media platforms. This recording is an excerpt from the Jewel Tree of Tibet, available through Sounds True. Music for the Bob Thurman podcast is generously supplied by Tenzing Chogyal. To learn more about the work and music of Tenzing Chogyal, please visit his website at tenzingchogyal.com. Thanks for tuning in, and Tashi Delek.